Queen Zar'thex had ruled the Vex Empire for 312 years. She had conquered 17 star systems. She had subjugated 47 species. She had expanded her territory through military force and maintained control through absolute psychological dominance. Every being under her rule feared her. Every being in her presence understood that she could end their existence with a single command. Fear was her greatest tool. Fear was also her greatest weakness, though she had never recognized it as such. The Vex Empire occupied a region of space adjacent to human territory. For centuries, the relationship between humans and the Vex had been one of tense equilibrium. Humans did not expand into Vex space. The Vex did not expand into human space. The border remained stable because both sides understood that a direct conflict would be catastrophically expensive for both parties. But Queen Zar'thex had grown tired of equilibrium. She had decided that the human species represented a future threat that needed to be eliminated immediately. She had concluded that a preemptive strike against Earth would be simpler and less costly than waiting for humans to eventually develop sufficient military capability to challenge Vex dominance. She had issued the order: Earth will be wiped from existence. All human settlements will be destroyed. All humans will be killed. The species will be rendered extinct. Begin operations immediately. It was not a careful decision. It was not a strategic analysis. It was the command of an absolute monarch who had learned that her commands were always obeyed. The command was disseminated to the Vex military. Assault fleets were assembled. Orbital bombardment platforms were positioned. The machinery of extinction was set in motion. And Queen Zar'thex sat on her throne and waited for confirmation that the human species no longer existed. The human response when the first Vex warship entered Earth orbit, humanity's military detected it immediately. The detection triggered a cascade of emergency protocols. Earth Defense Command went to full alert status. Military forces throughout human space were mobilized. The civilian government was briefed on the situation. The assessment was clear and devastating: the Vex were sending an extinction-level force. Humanity could not defeat the Vex in direct combat. The only question was whether Earth could evacuate a sufficient portion of the population to ensure humanity's survival. Commander Sarah Park convened an emergency session of Earth's highest military and civilian leadership. The Vex are initiating an extinction campaign, Park said without preamble. Our sensor data indicates initial assault force of 847 capital ships. That's larger than our entire military force. We cannot defeat them through conventional military means. Then what do we do? Asked Council Member Zhao. We surrender? We evacuate? Park activated a tactical display showing Earth's defensive positions. We have one advantage the Vex probably doesn't anticipate, Park said carefully. They're expecting us to respond with military force. They're expecting us to try to defend militarily. What we're going to do instead is far more effective. She paused. We're going to target the source of the command. We're going to kill the person issuing the orders. The strategy over the course of the next hour, Park outlined a strategy that seemed impossible. Humanity would not attempt to defeat the Vex military force. Instead, humanity would conduct a targeted operation against Queen Zar'thex herself. The Vex Empire is maintained through absolute psychological dominance by the Queen, Park explained. Without the Queen's authority, the Vex military command structure becomes fragmented. Without the Queen's orders, the extinction campaign becomes unmotivated. The Vex are not attacking Earth because they want to. They're attacking because they were ordered to by their Queen. Park leaned forward. If we eliminate the Queen, the extinction campaign collapses. The Vex military, suddenly without central authority, will not continue an operation that no longer has a purpose. How do we reach the Queen? Asked General Morrison, the Earth Defense Force commander. Her throne is inside the Vex capital, surrounded by her personal guard, protected by defensive systems that exceed our capability. We don't reach her through military means, Park replied. We reach her through deception. We infiltrate her command center. We place a weapon inside her throne room. We eliminate her before the Vex military can respond. The plan was audacious. The plan was probably suicidal. The plan was the only chance humanity had. The infiltration. The Vex Imperial Command Center was the most secure installation in known space. It was protected by 17 different security systems. It was guarded by Zar'thex's personal elite force. It was monitored by surveillance systems that could identify a threat from 3 kilometers away. It was supposed to be completely impenetrable. But it had one vulnerability: it was designed to exclude external threats. It was not designed to deal with a threat that was already inside. Humanity had, over the course of the past 150 years, been carefully placing agents inside Vex space. The agents had infiltrated the military, the government, the civilian infrastructure. They had been positioned, gradually, across Vex territory. One of those agents was positioned inside the Imperial Command Center itself, in a clerical position that gave her access to the restricted areas where the Queen's personal quarters were located. Her name was Elena Vasquez. She had been undercover for 37 years. She had spent that time waiting for this moment. When Commander Park's order came through on a secure channel, Elena moved. She accessed the security protocols she had spent 37 years memorizing. She bypassed 3 separate lock systems. She moved through corridors that were monitored but whose monitoring systems she had learned to manipulate. And she reached the Queen's private chambers. Queen Zar'thex was alone, reviewing reports of the Extinction campaign against Earth. She was confident that the operation would be completed within days. She was satisfied that the threat represented by humanity was being permanently eliminated. She never heard Elena approach. She never saw Elena produce the weapon. She never understood that her reign, which had lasted 312 years, was about to end. The weapon was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was a simple device designed to disrupt neural function. It worked in seconds. Queen Zar'thex collapsed. Elena checked her pulse. The Queen was dead. 37 years of undercover preparation had taken 47 seconds to execute. The Empire crumbles the moment Queen Zar'thex died. The chain of command in the Vex Empire fractured. The Queen's personal successor, her chosen heir, was not present. The senior military commander was not informed immediately. The government administration was not activated to manage the transition. The Vex military, receiving no new orders after the Queen stopped issuing them, had no idea what to do. Elena broadcast a message across all Vex military frequencies. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, currently in the Vex Imperial Command Center. Queen Zar'thex has been eliminated. The Extinction campaign against Earth is cancelled. Any commander who continues operations against Earth will be considered in violation of Vex succession protocols and will face execution. It was a bluff. Elena had no authority to execute anyone. But the Vex military, suddenly finding themselves without a queen and receiving what appeared to be a legitimate command from inside their own command center, stood down. Within hours, the Extinction campaign had been halted. The assault fleets that had been preparing to bombard Earth began to withdraw. The orbital platforms were powered down. The machinery of Extinction shut down entirely. And the Vex Empire, suddenly without central authority, found itself facing a transition that would determine whether it would survive or collapse completely. The revelation: when the Vex military finally reached their command center and discovered what had happened, they found Elena Vasquez calmly waiting for them. Queen Zar'thex ordered the extinction of humanity, Elena explained without apology. I eliminated her to prevent that extinction. The order stands: any further military action against Earth will be considered a violation of imperial succession protocols. The Vex commanders were stunned. A human had infiltrated the most secure facility in their empire. A human had killed their queen. A human had issued orders that the Vex military had followed. The Vex military commander, a being named Shovak who had served under Zar'thex for 200 years, understood immediately that the situation had fundamentally changed. You have killed the queen, Shovak said to Elena. By our law, that makes you her killer. By our law, you should be executed immediately. By your law, Elena replied calmly, the killer of the queen has the right to claim succession to the throne if no legitimate heir has been identified. There is no legitimate heir currently in the capital. Which means, under your own succession protocols, I have the right to claim the throne. Shovak looked at the human woman standing in the Queen's command center and realized that she understood Vex law better than most Vex commanders. You're claiming the throne of the Vex Empire, Shovak said slowly. I am, Elena confirmed. the transition the Vex Empire was thrown into chaos. The senior military commanders debated what to do. Some argued that Elena should be executed immediately for killing the queen. Others argued that her understanding of succession law gave her a legitimate claim. Still others argued that the entire succession protocol was invalid because Elena was not Vex. The political factions within the empire that had been held in check by Zar'thex's absolute authority suddenly began to emerge and compete for power. Elena, understanding that she could not actually govern the Vex Empire, made a strategic decision. She announced that she was abdicating her claim to the throne in favor of Shovak, the military commander. She announced that she was leaving the Vex Empire immediately. She announced that in exchange for the abdication, Shovak would commit to a permanent peace treaty with humanity. Shovak, facing the option of civil war within the Vex Empire or accepting a peace treaty with humanity, chose the treaty. Within days, Elena was on a transport ship heading back to Earth, leaving behind the Vex Empire in the midst of a succession crisis that would reshape their civilization. The galactic reaction, the revelation that a human had infiltrated the Vex Imperial Command Center, killed Queen Zar'thex, and issued orders that the Vex military had followed, triggered shockwaves across the galaxy. Every species with advanced military capabilities suddenly realized that their own security systems might be compromised. Every empire began questioning whether there were human infiltrators in their midst. Every government demanded briefings on what else humanity had accomplished while remaining hidden. The Vex Empire's attempted extinction of humanity had failed. More than that, it had exposed the Vex Empire's internal vulnerability and demonstrated that humans possessed capabilities that no species had anticipated. The Conclave Assembly called for an emergency session to address what they were calling the Assassination event. High Warden North convened a special committee to investigate how humanity had accomplished the infiltration. The investigation revealed something that shocked every government in the galaxy. Humanity had infiltrated Vex space 150 years ago and had been placing operatives strategically the entire time. The Vex had never detected a single infiltration. The infiltration had been so complete and so subtle that the Vex Empire had been operating with human agents embedded in their government, military, and civilian infrastructure without knowing it. The implications were staggering. The interrogation of Elena. When Elena returned to Earth, she was immediately placed in a secure facility for debriefing. The interrogation lasted 3 weeks. Every detail of the infiltration was documented. Every stage of the operation was analyzed. Every moment of the Queen's assassination was examined. What emerged from the interrogation was a portrait of extraordinary planning and patience. We knew the Vex represented an existential threat to humanity, Elena explained during one session. We knew that at some point, Zar'thex would decide that humanity needed to be eliminated. So we decided to be inside the Vex system when that decision was made. For 150 years, the interrogator asked incredulously. For as long as it took, Elena replied. I spent 37 years as a clerical assistant in the Vex Command Center. 37 years learning Vex protocols, memorizing security systems, understanding succession law, positioning myself for the moment when I would be needed. Elena paused. I never expected to use that knowledge. I hoped I would never have to. But when Queen Zar'thex issued the extinction order, I understood that the preparation was not for nothing. The broader implications. The assassination of Queen Zar'thex by a human infiltrator had consequences that extended far beyond the immediate military situation. Every major power in the galaxy suddenly realized that they might have human operatives embedded in their infrastructure. The Conclave initiated a comprehensive security review of all member species governments and military installations. The review revealed that humanity had infiltrated the territories of 7 major powers. The infiltrators had not been actively conducting espionage or sabotage. They had simply been present, waiting for the moment when they might be needed. The discovery triggered a galaxy-wide panic about human infiltration capabilities. But it also triggered something else, recognition that humanity possessed strategic patience and organizational sophistication that had been severely underestimated. The question of morality. The assassination of Queen Zar'thex raised profound moral questions that would occupy philosophers across the galaxy for years. Elena Vasquez had killed a sovereign monarch. By any traditional measure of law and ethics, that was an act of assassination, a violation of sovereignty, a crime against the Vex Empire. But Elena had killed the monarch to prevent the extinction of her own species. She had acted under the principle of survival, her species' survival against attempted genocide. The moral question was whether that justification was sufficient. Whether preventing extinction justified assassination. Whether species survival could morally justify the killing of a sovereign. Different civilizations reached different conclusions. Humans tended toward the position that Elena's action was justified. The Vex tended toward the position that the assassination was an unforgivable violation. Other species found themselves genuinely uncertain about the ethics of the situation. The reformation of the Vex Empire under Shovak's leadership, the Vex Empire underwent a transformation. The absolute monarchy was replaced with a more distributed power structure. The military dominance that Zar'thex had maintained was reduced. The culture of fear that had characterized the Vex was gradually replaced with something more moderate. Shovak, understanding that Zar'thex's aggressive expansion had made the Vex vulnerable to infiltration, pulled back from aggressive military operations and focused instead on internal consolidation. The Vex Empire did not become gentle or pacifist. But it became less aggressive. It became less prone to making extinction-level decisions based on theoretical future threats. And in that reformation, Shovak recognized the value that Elena had brought. By eliminating Zar'thex before she could complete the extinction campaign, Elena had forced the Vex to reckon with their own internal failures. The personal reckoning Elena Vasquez, after completing her debriefing, requested to step down from active military service. The request was granted. Elena spent her remaining years living quietly on Earth, reflecting on the 37 years she had spent undercover and the 47 seconds it had taken to eliminate the Queen. In her final interview before her death, Elena was asked whether she regretted the assassination. "I regret that it was necessary," Elena replied. "I regret that Queen Zar'thex made a decision that required her elimination. I regret that I had to spend 37 years preparing for a moment I hoped would never come." She paused. "But I do not regret the assassination itself. Because the alternative was the extinction of humanity. And when faced with the choice between a sovereign's life and my entire species' existence, the choice is not difficult." The historical legacy. The assassination of Queen Zar'thex became one of the most studied political events in galactic history. Military academies taught it as an example of how vulnerabilities emerge from absolute power. Political science courses analyzed it as a case study in succession crises. Ethical philosophy examined it as a fundamental question about the justification for assassination. But what most scholars focused on was not the assassination itself, but what it revealed about human capabilities. The fact that humanity had infiltrated 7 different empires without detection. The fact that humans had positioned themselves in critical locations for over 100 years. The fact that a human had not only accessed the most secure installation in the galaxy but had also understood the political and legal implications well enough to issue legitimate orders that the Vex military obeyed. It all suggested that humanity possessed strategic and organizational capabilities that had been fundamentally underestimated. And in that underestimation, Queen Zar'thex had made her fatal error. The quiet conclusion: Elena Vasquez was buried in a simple ceremony on Earth. Few people attended. Few people even knew who she was. She had spent her life in secrecy, and she had ended her life in obscurity. But in the archives of Earth Defense Command, a single document remained, a record of the infiltration operation, the 37 years of preparation, the 47 seconds of execution, and the elimination of the being who had tried to wipe humanity from existence. The record noted that Elena had sacrificed her normal life, her identity, her freedom for decades to ensure that humanity would survive if existential threat emerged. It noted that when that threat emerged, she had acted without hesitation. And it noted that in doing so, she had taught the galaxy something fundamental: never underestimate the patience of a species that believes its survival is at stake. Never assume that the most secure location is truly secure. And never believe that a threat has been eliminated until you have personally confirmed the elimination. Because somewhere in your empire, there might be a human operative who has been waiting decades for the moment to prove you wrong.